Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. I am so glad y'all are here. I've missed you so much. I feel like I haven't been in this closet doing a voiceover in forever. So I'm super excited. I have another translucent clay project for you and some alcohol inks. So I'll be using these 4 colors, and I think I show them to you in just a minute or two. And just gonna cut off 4 even-ish pieces of translucent clay, and you'll see there that I got a little pink dye on the corner, and it is okay. As I'm working the clay, it'll kind of just absorb into there, and it really isn't a large amount, so I don't think it's really going to affect anything. So anyway, it's okay if that happens, because that's just kind of the nature of inks. They just kind of get all over the place, and even if you try, it isn't always going to keep everything separate. So the gunmetal I'm putting aside, I'm going to use that later. And then I have gold, sky, and ocean. This ocean is just beautiful, I think. So with each of those colors, I am going to tint or dye each of these pieces of clay. And really it's kind of up to you how much ink you want to put on there. It really is a personal preference. I didn't use a lot on there, so I do like to roll mine out a little bit flatter so that I have more space to work with, and I can kind of put as much ink as I want on the top and then spread it out so it dries a bit faster because, well, I'm impatient and yeah, I don't want to wait. So just putting a little bit of each of the ink colors onto each of the pieces of clay. Spreading it out, just using a very old paintbrush that I don't really care if anything happens to it. And off to the side, I do have a little bit of alcohol ink. I just kind of dip it in there and then wipe it off on a paper towel. And then I go into the next color. If you don't really care about color bleed or having like a pure color, then you can just kind of go from color to color. But it could really muddy your colors if you had a dark and a light together. So you do want those to dry a little bit, and I waited as long as I possibly could. And then I just started to kind of crumble it up together and work it together. And I'm being very meticulous here because I was not at all wanting to put gloves on because it's really hot outside, and then it just makes my hands all sweaty, and I just don't like wearing the gloves if at all possible. And I do want to show you what it looks like if you just use a little bit. It doesn't tint it a whole lot, but it does give it a really nice color, and it's really hard to get the colors on your clay the same color in the bottle because of the concentration levels in there. But the gold, I actually didn't like how light it was. It looked more like a tan color. So I did want to experiment with that, and I thought, you know what, just as a little control piece, I'm going to cut off a small little sliver and put it aside so that I can see how much more ink I would need to put on there to kind of make it darker, and just to see how dark it really becomes, if it even becomes worth it, you know, the effort to put in to keep adding ink to your clay. So I got the gold actually, it's very, makes the clay very sticky or like goopy almost. So I didn't really like that about the gold color, but I found a way around that here in a little bit. I'll show you. So I added a little bit more and let it dry, mixed it up, and then there is the control piece and then the new piece that I have mixed up. And it does add quite a bit of depth to it. It's still rather light. It looks kind of goldish more than it did, and I did want to show you with the piece on top flattened in there so you can kind of get a better idea of like the color difference. So anyway, that was just a fun little experiment I decided to do. And I'm going to make a Skinner blend out of this. So with each of those colors, just rolled into a ball, and then I'm going to roll it into a teardrop shape. I'm not really going to go into a lot of detail here, just very briefly. This really isn't the video for like learning how to do Skinner blends. So I had them all rolled out, and I was kind of deciding which order I wanted to put the colors in. So just played around with that and then put them together. And then I do like to flatten mine a little bit before I run it through the pasta machine. You can do it by hand. You can do it with your roller. Any way will work. You can use both. You just have to have it flat enough so that it's going to fit through the machine and not kind of all gump up on you when you stick it through there. And I am going to run this through my pasta machine like that, and then I will fold it and then turn it over and put it down, and that's so that you don't get any air bubbles in there, so that the air bubbles get pushed upward and out. So I ran that through my pasta machine about 5 times on, I believe, the second to thickest setting. And you can keep going as much as you want to get it as blended as you want, but that middle section is already kind of, bleeding into the other colors, and I did kind of want to, I didn't want just 2 colors, I really wanted 3 separate kind of colors to it. So I am going to elongate it, just running it through my pasta machine like that, and I'll keep doing that, taking it down 1 notch at a time. And this is the final piece, and I think I took it down to a number 5, which is kind of like the middle setting. Really, it just kind of gets wompy and wibbly from there. You can see on the little wavy lines you get there, and it kind of starts to rip a little bit, and some of it was ripping because of underneath my clay. My ring was pushing against it, so it was leaving like little indents in there, but it's all good. It's going to get rolled out again, so I'm okay with the way it is. But this became really like just sticky almost. I don't know. Like, I'm sure it's because it's kind of hotter outside, and that's just kind of the nature of it. When you put something wet on the clay, it just kind of tends to make it a goopy, I don't know, like a flour kind of consistency, like a baking flour. Anyway, so I did let that leach on a piece of paper for like 30 seconds, and honestly that was just quite enough time. Any longer and I probably would have never gotten it off the paper, and the gold was the worst. It was kind of goopy, but I mean, it worked out in the end. I'm just kind of letting you know if you do have that gold color, maybe you've experienced it too, I don't know. So you'll see there, it kind of did leach out a little bit, and that's good because it was going to make it easier to work with. You don't need to do it for very long, honestly. So I'm going to cut that down into a more manageable shape so that all my ends and stuff are pretty cohesive in their size and length. And then I'm just going to fold it back and forth like an accordion, just very gently, just trying not to get any air bubbles in there. So I am going to flatten the edges and then use my side of my tissue blade there just to kind of give it a nice gentle flatten. And then rolling it up or down, just making sure that you're pressing it outward, those air bubbles. And that way you have a nice pretty pattern and no little bubbles stuck inside, and that would mess up your pattern otherwise. So I just kept doing that back and forth, back and forth. And I really like the color combination together, that gold and the blue colors together. I just think they come together really nicely. I don't know, something about it. It kind of screams ocean to me. I know the ocean isn't really gold, but something about all those colors together kind of reminds me of the ocean. Everything reminds me of the ocean. I cut down the sides a little bit, and then for some reason I didn't cut down that one end, and I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. But I do recommend cutting down all of the sides. And then this is just me trying to get a pretty even cut just so that both pieces are the same like length. And then you can decide if you want to put it blue to blue or gold to gold or blue to gold or however you want to do it. I did turn off the camera, took a second, decided what I wanted to do, and then came back on and started putting it together. Made a little clay sandwich, if you will. I had spaghetti for lunch today, and it was delicious, guys. I love food, which reminds me, go check out my second channel, Frugally Delicious. I make budget food, and I have a blast doing it. So you should totally go check that out. So anyway, back to clay. Oh yeah, you can always let me know what you guys ate for lunch, dinner, breakfast, snack. I love talking about food, even on this channel, okay? We can have clay and eat our food too. I really liked the way it looked inside. I didn't really show it close up, but you could kind of see like these little tiny slivers or layers in between. It came out really pretty. So what I decided to do was to make little cuts all the way through, just in a random form and fashion. There was no method to my madness. And since I am working with such a small piece, I couldn't make as many cuts as I would have liked to, but honestly, I was just kind of experimenting with this and playing with this idea and just kind of seeing what it would come out to be. I wrote this idea down like a long time ago and then forgot about it, and then now I'm trying to go back and figure out what I was trying to do in the idea. So anyway, I'm wanting to put this back together, so I just cut it and then left them in the same shape, but wide enough to where I could put my gunmetal color down in the crevice of all of these spots. I kind of wanted to, to get these pretty lines in there, and I was trying to use the ink to accomplish that. But just using my paintbrush, really dig down in there and make sure all the surface is covered, all of the little cracks and nooks and crannies and stuff. And then I am going to put it back together, and I'm going to try to let it dry for a few minutes. And then I'll kind of use my tinfoil as a guide to kind of push it back together. Again, I'm just doing this because I don't want to put on gloves. So you can put on gloves, but honestly, it just makes things easier if you just kind of use the things that are around it. And I did take a piece of tissue and kind of dab off all of the excess that may have been leaking out through all of the cracks and everything and on the outside. And I do reuse my tin foil. You can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol to get any of the remnants off of your tin foil. You can reuse it, guys. You can totally reuse it. And then I just smushed it all back together, sliced off all of the little messy pieces. I even did that on the top. I don't remember if I did the bottom, but you can do both. It just depends on how clean you want your piece to be. And then I decided to go ahead and flip it on its side and then just make 3 large slices into it. So I'll end up with 3 hopefully even-ish sized pieces. And then I did kind of struggle a little bit with it. I do need to sharpen my blade. But honestly, it's kind of like a squishy, messy piece anyway, so it's not really imperative that you have a super sharp blade. And then just putting the pieces back together. I don't know, that kind of reminds me of like those metal grates that go on windows sometimes. It's just in that kind of crossed pattern, X kind of a pattern on the outside. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but sometimes I'll pass by homes and they'll have like little metal bars on it, but they'll be in a pretty pattern like that. That's what it kind of looked like. Kind of fun anyway. And I'm just distorting mine a little bit. You totally don't have to do that if you don't want to, if you want it to be very nice, clean, crisp, but I'm going to further kind of distort this as I make a piece out of it. So just using my roller. And then I had a circle cutter. So I just took the clay and was starting to push it down into not the blunt side of the cutter, but the actual cutting side. But I honestly think that if you used the blunt side of the cutter, that you would get a better bond when you cut your clay. And I'll kind of show you here in a little while when I'm doing some other cutting that I kind of had the same idea after I cut it once and it didn't really work, so then I had to use the blunt side of my blade. I do want to make a backing for this and I forgot about that, so I had to improvise here, and I didn't want to use a solid color, and I have scrap clay here anyway, so I just took all the scrap pieces, put it together, made a big old mushy mess, and squished it, rolled it out, and you can make it as thick as you want. It's your backing for your clay, so however, thick you want your backing to be. And then you just take your circle cutter or whatever cutter you're using. You can use any cutter you want. I just have a circle cutter, and I'm going to actually make a shape out of this. You'll see. So this is at the point where you might want to use the blunt side instead of the sharp side. I just feel like it just cuts better. And then you kind of just twist it a little bit just to kind of, shear off any pieces and to kind of hopefully give you a little bit more of a cohesive cut on the outside. Of course, you can use the edge of your tissue blade and make sure you got all your little pieces off and everything's just beautiful around the outside. And this was my paper cutter. Again, you can use any cutter you want, but I really like this pattern. I just drew it out, and then cut it out with some scissors, and boom. So I'm just gently laying that on the top. I really wish I would have used a larger circle cutter. And this is where I started to realize, honestly, that you could use the blunt side of the blade and you'll get a better bond. It squishes the clay into the clay, and I know that sounds terrible, but instead of getting like this really sharp cut. So anyway, enough of my rambling about that. Each time I wanted to make a cut, I just put the little piece of paper back on there just as a guide, because I'm really not like, I can do this visually from my mind. I can't. I have to have a piece of paper or something being a guide. So I just used it, put it on there, measured it, and just continued making my cuts. But honestly, you can kind of play around with this and make any shape that you want to. I'm really more partial to like a diamond shape. I mean, because, you know, diamonds are a girl's best friend. So just, make your cuts, and then you can use the edge of your tissue blade or your fingers to kind of make everything nice and beautiful. And it's nice and puffy inside. I just love the way it feels. Also, you can kind of see on the back how it dips in. That's how you know you got like a really nice bond inside. There's basically an air bubble in there. And I'll show you later how to take care of that so like you don't have a problem while you're baking. I do want to put a little hole in it, and this was the only circle cutter that I had that was small enough. It was like a pencil cap to an eyebrow pencil. But I was like, what else can I use? I have this paintbrush. I'll use this paintbrush. And it worked fine. You just kind of poke it gently down into the clay and then give it a nice twirly, twisty, and it'll make sure everything's nice and bonded. And honestly, you can make the hole as big as you want just by continuing to kind of run it in a circle inside. And then do be sure to flip it over also, and then use it through the back side just to make sure that everything is nice and even, because a hole in the top is always bigger, so you want to come through the back and make sure the back is just as big. And you can kind of put it down in there as much as you want to make it as large as you want to. And all you need to do is hang your necklace now, basically. Of course, we do need to bake it, but before we bake it, there's a couple of steps, and that is just to poke a hole in it for your finding that you're going to use to hang your little pendant on your necklace. So just using this toothpick that I have, and again doing the same thing I did with the paintbrush, just poking a hole through it, and also coming up through the back just so you have a nice open hole to hang your piece. Also, you can kind of like poke and play with it at the top just to kind of get the shape how you want it to be, or as pointy as you want it to be, or not pointy. And just to make sure that when you put this in the oven, it doesn't explode. I've never had it happen, but I've heard that, you know, maybe that's a thing. I don't know. Just use a metal finding and poke a hole into the top of the clay. Make sure you go all the way through into the air bubble that's inside of the clay. That way it has a little spot to come out, and you can make two if you want to, the top and the bottom, especially if you're going to resin it. You're not going to be able to see it. I baked it, then I put some resin on it front and back, and then put my little finding on it. And I'm out of wire, so I'm going to have to buy some more. So I didn't have it hung on a necklace or anything. But this is the piece. I thought it came out, you know, fairly decent. There were a lot of things I probably would have changed, but overall, it came out really pretty. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!